Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of the event Let's Ask Expert, brought to you by the soft skills streams of the global BA community, where every month we are discussing various different soft skills based on the choosing of our audience. So we encourage each and every one of you to stay till the end of the episode, because at the end you will have the chance to influence the topic of the 11th episode. So last time we had this event when we had the experts during the ninth episode, you had the opportunity to vote for 5 items: attention to details, leadership, conflict resolution, influence, and teamwork. And majority of you has decided to choose the topic of conflict resolution. And that's why this is the topic that we'll be covering today. And we have a large group of experts, as per usual, to talk about this wonderful topic. So let me introduce them one by one, starting with the first expert, Mikhail. So Mikhail, welcome to the session. Glad to have you today. Can you please introduce yourselves to our audience?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Mikhail. I'm a business analyst working in EPAM already for 7 years. So, business analyst with different multidisciplinary delivery experience, also working as product owner, list manager, and so on. And yeah, my main accent on the media entertainment domain, and also I am constantly supporting EPAM with business analysis competency and supporting as a level up and skill product owner. I think that's it from my side.
Not to mention that also you have multinational experience, because working in multiple locations in your career at EPAM. So you also have the perspective of international experience for handling conflicts potentially. So your experience will be definitely very valuable in today's session. So glad to have you with us today. We also have a second expert, Anna Leszczyńska from the L&D department. So Anna, welcome to the session. Could you introduce yourself to our
Yes,
audience?
hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Colleagues, when it comes to my experience in conflict management, I think each of us has this experience of being in the conflict, witnessing conflict, navigating conflict. I have been in IT industry for the past, I think, 14 years in various positions, and had the opportunity to work with the different people, and also witness many of the conflict situations. That's why in our organization, I'm very much engaged in conflict resolution trainings, plus negotiations trainings, which are kind of also related. So hopefully my experience in this area will help you to find the proper ways of navigating conflict. Maybe you will see the value in the proper communication as well.
So thank you, Anna, for being here with us today. It's actually Anna's second opportunity to participate in this initiative. So I'm super glad I didn't discourage you on the first event, and that you agreed to join us today. Also, Anna is a trainer in L&D training, what to do when conflict happens. So if you are interested in that, I encourage you to join Learn portal and sign up for that training. I'm sure there will be also a lot of valuable information in the training session itself. And last but not least, we also have Richard Lewis, who is a senior director at EPAM. So Richard, also glad to have you in our session. And could you also introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Glad to be here. Yes, so this is my 10th year at EPAM, so I suspect Anna and I are probably started around the same time. I don't want to say how many years I've been in IT, except to say that I actually was a contributor to TCP. For those of you who use Ethernet, you know what I mean, and something called the Internet. So I've been in IT for just a few years. And yes, conflict resolution is a daily activity for any of us who've been in certainly in a management position for any period of time. But I would say any of us who have any kind of relationship with any other human being on the planet has been involved in conflict resolution, whether it's IT or not.
So I think that's also good information for our audience, that even when you reach a high level of, like the director position, you still require that skill, and this is also something to have in your portfolio that can be useful in your day-to-day career. So those are our experts for today's session. I will be moderating this discussion. So without further ado, let us straight get into it. So as always, I'm stop sharing the screen. We just have a conversation to see each other. I also encourage our participants who are watching us online to ask their questions. If time will allow us, we will be asking them throughout the session. And also, like I mentioned, at the very end, I will share with you the link to Mentimeter to choose the topic for the next episode. So let's start with the first question that I have for you, because each and every one of you, you come from a different background, different country of origin, different upbringing. So let me ask you this first question. In your environment, in your day-to-day job, what is the most common source of conflict when you deal with, your day-to-day activities? So Anna, maybe let's start with you. What is the origin of the conflict for you?
I wouldn't say that is a conflict per se. When it comes to my activities as a trainer, I'm presenting different point of views, different approaches to certain elements. And very often it might happen that we have clashes related to the ways how we perceive things. And sometimes it's happening that people can see their own point of view and they are not willing to see others' people's point of view. And because of that, we might have clashes. Because of that, we have disagreements and sometimes lack of the respect.
Okay, thank you. Mikhail, what about you when it comes to being a BA? What kind of conflicts can you encounter?
I don't know. On daily basis, I would not think I have observed a lot of conflicts, because usually if you have on daily basis conflicts, something wrong with the project or with the team setup, or you need to gather all teams and discuss it. If you have everyday conflict, it's very strange. Also, it depends on the dimension we're talking about. Conflict, yeah, because a conflict, it could be like, from technical standpoint, is the like push request conflicts, or it's inner motivation, or an individual conflict. Yeah, and this is, I think, what we will talk mostly about here on this session. Yeah, and this is really, yeah, when I'm talking about an individual conflict or a conflicts between individuals, it's mostly for me like to talk about prevention measures. Like when people came to conflict, and if you go to origins of this term in general, I don't know, 15th century, it was from Latin to clash, and later was interpreted like a battle. So it was some physical negative event. And now when we're talking about now modern life or IT domain, for me, it's not the battle, but it's really something severe or critical situation. On daily basis, it should not happen, and prevention, proactive measures, let's say, should be in place to exclude the situation from leadership team on all levels. I mean, program level, project level, product level, team level, stream level, whatever level. And team lead should proactively monitor it, and solve in advance this situation or mitigate these situations. But on daily, and for sure, for me, it depends on the, again, another dimension. It's like severity of this term conflict. It could be low, medium, high. On daily basis, we could have some low, let's say, severity conflicts within the team. For example, when someone is saying, okay, why do we have this call today at 10? I'm tired from this calls each day. Our Scrum sync ups for 10 people. Really, do we need it? And this is one situation. Another situation, if someone from, I don't know, for example, all stream members, developers, QAs, and business and product owners gathering on weekly or bi-weekly basis, and someone is saying, oh, I'm tired from this bi-weekly on a monthly sync ups, I'm really tired, I need to work. And then this is different type of conflict. Like in first case, you like, there is a different chain of events you need to evaluate. Like, is it really the case? It's the process conflict, because probably indeed each day thing is not relevant. And when someone is pretending that it's not correct to have monthly sync up, maybe there is something with to talk with on individual basis. I mean, maybe it's the wrong person who is invited to this call. I know I shifted slightly to another area, but for me, yeah, it's my point. Just my let's say, yeah, my perception.
I think you've also inspired me many years ago when you told me a very interesting statement when you said that for us as a business analyst, it's not only to resolve a conflict, but it's actually from preventing a conflict from ever happening. And if we allowed a conflict to happen, it means that we already failed at our job. And that sentence, I remember it. You told me this so many years ago, and it's still stuck with me. And I think that's quite an inspiring statement, just to have this proactive approach.
Yeah. For me, again, it's specific of our job. Business analysts here in EPAM, for example, but considering we are, in most cases, we have this bridge between business stakeholders, clients, and our team, it's really crucial for us to do not have conflicts, because we are managing really different, and not saying about third-party vendors and different other parties that are involved. And my personal experience, usually I'm trying to orchestrate all teams to be streamlined without conflicts and everyone to be happy and collaborative. And sometimes it's challenging for sure, because different companies and different parties involved for sure almost always have different internal goals, let's say.
Yeah.
We always talk about
interest.
Yeah. Because we always talk about program, product, project level. We all have one goal. We are a happy team. We are working toward completion of this product. But if you're talking about different parties, especially different companies, in my scenario, it's always different internal motivation and purpose of each activity.
Richard, what about yourself? When you are a director at EPAM, do you also encounter conflicts, and are they also interpersonal or more business oriented? How's your perspective different?
The easy answer is yes.
And the more complex one?
Yeah. Well, I guess I was gonna. I agreed with what Anna was saying. And I was going to elaborate a little bit on that. I think my experience says that a lot of conflict arises from two things. One, our heads are so filled with our own thoughts that we want to communicate that we forget to listen. And listening is probably one of the key areas where you can avoid conflict. And the other point I wanted to make is that a lot of conflict results from fear. And you need to understand where the fear is being generated from the other side. It could be fear of looking stupid. It could be the fear of not completing something on time. So, to Mihail's point, I can't attend two meetings at once. I have to now make a decision. I'm scared I'm going to make the wrong decision because I'm going to miss something out. So, if you start to listen to people and understand what their fears are, suddenly you can start to dissolve the conflicts, because you're hearing where they're coming from, and you're removing the element that will likely cause an escalation.
I think it's also very interesting when you mentioned about this listening, because I think in the last episode it was Larry Salomon who mentioned that it is no coincidence that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that we actually should spend more time listening rather than talking. But we have this perception that conflict is such a this negative force. But do you think a conflict can have a positive outcome and positive impact on our project? And if so, how that can have this other influence in this more positive light?
Is that
from my side? Yeah, from my side, I have such. It was negative personally for me also experience. I can share it, but it was like. It was many years ago, but it was like a situation as in a cinema when someone is playing a bad cop and another one is a good cop, and I was a bad cop in a scope creep rejection, and my management was a good cop, and the purpose was for me to create to push back any request from a client to get specific scope done for no money. And I was pushing back and doing presentation for 20 managers from the client side. It was on site, so it was face to face, and absolutely each one was in a conflict with me because they were pushing, we will not pay money for this. You already get a lot of millions and you should do it for free for us. And I was saying, no, here's the justification why. And then in a couple of days of such conflicts, like management this was playing a good cop role and said, okay, we will do it for free, but we will exclude this part from our SOW. But it was artificial, let's say, conflict. It was not a real. But I cannot imagine a positive conflicts, except what Richard mentioned when we are trying to identify fears of the people by digging into the what called for now conflict. But when we discussed this fear and what is the most concerning thing for this person, then we transform this conflict in the common understanding and moving forward with on the positive note, let's say. From my side.
Anna, do you agree?
Yes, I can agree. However, I would like to add a couple of the elements and a little bit encourage people to embrace conflicts, because we shouldn't be afraid of conflicts, because that's a very natural thing that we already established at the beginning of the call. There's a lot of also TED Talks that I can encourage you guys to listen to and see the value in conflict. But there's one constraint added to it, that the resolution has to satisfy both sides. Then we can say that the conflict gave us some kind of positivity. And when I would like just to circle back to the first question, Jan, from your side, about the resources or sources of the conflicts. Just to make that clear, very often in the company, it might be the conflict based on who does what, so it's related to the power. It can be related to the process, so how we are doing things, and can be also related to what we do, so to the tasks. So each kind of conflict we can put to one of those baskets. And then when we are somehow challenged by the conflict, we are thinking, okay, what is the source of the conflict? What is the root cause of the conflict? We need to be very curious. We need to apply active listening to it to get the needed information. Then agree or even negotiate what's supposed to be the resolution. And then through the whole process with our interlocutor, we are building some kind of relationship. We can also prove how intelligent and mature we are as an organization, or how creative we are in solving problems, or how we are capable of thinking out of the box. And then when we have this resolution, both sides are amazed that, whoa, actually, we made it. That's great. So we can do a lot of good things with the conflict, but it has to be managed properly.
There's also this very important statement. I don't know whether it applies to project life, but I know in personal life it can be the case that each conflict you overcome together is like eye of the chain that binds two people together, right? So I think the more you go through in life, when it comes to dealing with conflicts, the more you feel like attached to the second person because you've already invested so much effort, so much energy. And I think also when it comes to the creativity of the problem is the case that when you have multiple opinions clashing at the same time, that might be actually a positive force in terms of trying to find the solution. That like I'm not the alpha and omega, and it doesn't mean I'm always right. So maybe someone else will have a better option, better understanding. Right? So it might also be a useful thing to be creative for finding the conflict resolution.
And one more thing I would like to add, Jan, to your words. Very often people during the conflict, they perceive the conflict as something very personal, even in their organizations. Like, oh, you have a problem with me. And we are it's something even unconsciously is happening to us. So it's very important to just take a break, like 3 seconds, and think, okay, that's not about me. We have a problem with the process. Process is not me. I'm only the part of it. And when you want to navigate the conflict, it's like try to help your interlocutor to say, to see, hey, okay, we are the part of the conflict, but the problem is this, and I want to solve it. And even that kind of action shows other parties that we are capable of dealing with the problem, because we can distinguish what is the problem.
When it comes to personal conflict, I very much like the quote from Tom Holland when he said in one of the interviews that, and I quote, if you have a problem with me, but you don't have my mobile number, it means you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. Right? So
exactly.
I don't know whether that can be applied every time. You know, sometimes on a project we might come across people, especially on the customer side, to whom we don't have the mobile phone number, but we might have clash of interest, right?
But in the moment when we feel that something is off, just approach the person and try to clear the air, because very often we add the interpretation to the situation. It is our own interpretation. And to be honest, we are just human beings that we really like to spiral things. And again, I highly encourage people to face the problem, face the real problem. And also on the top of that, we need to learn the proper language. And your language is not so how to say it, it's not the best way to communicate when the stake is high, when the emotions also are hijacked. So we need to also be very careful how we address things.
That's definitely true. But also a question from my side, because sometimes, we have on the project the situation where, I don't know, the customer is upset we haven't delivered something, that we forgot about the requirement. Then, the developers say, oh, but the requirements were not clear, or, the quality is not good enough. And tester says, oh, it was not an acceptance criteria. And, it goes all the way to the BAs. But then the BA said, oh, but actually we didn't have enough time to make a proper requirement elicitation, right? So what would be your suggestion, what would be your advice on avoiding this blame shifting and, putting it from one person to another and just trying to avoid the witch hunt? So maybe Richard, do you have any kind of suggestions from your experience?
I have no idea what project in particular you're referring to, but
well, with 20 years of IT,
almost every project that we're involved in. Let's put it that way. Look, I think the simplest approach is you get everyone to sit around the table, virtually or physically. I think a lot of conflict arises because there used to be that game of telephone or something like that, where someone would make up something and whisper it to the person next to them and next to them, and then you'd find out what the message was that came out at the end. And that happens a lot, and you get a lot of conflict as a result of that. So getting everyone to sit around the table and own up to their part in whatever was missing, but also to own up to whatever was done successfully. I think we often lose sight of what was accomplished. So in your example, where something was delivered to the point where it's being tested or even put into production and doesn't necessarily meet all of the expectations of the end user, it's generally an 80-20 rule. You still got 80% of it right. And we tend to, and I'm looking at Anna a little bit. I think human nature, you invoked that we're human beings by nature, I think, err on the side of pessimism versus optimism. So you get everyone around the table, you celebrate what you've done well, but then collectively you look at not who did something wrong, but how to resolve the problem, so that you make it more about finding an end game as opposed to a witch hunt.
Michał, how does it look like from your point of view as a business analyst? How to ensure that all of the parties are satisfied with the outcome? What strategies would you apply to make sure? that it works?
I don't know. For to your question, to add on top what Richard says, saying I would add that for me it's always the most important part to make kind of a redirection from the root cause, digging from this looking for a party or a team who was involved and which was this fault initially. Usually I'm trying to set up move forward meeting and look more into the future results in the next mitigation steps, rather than checking what was the root cause or a source of the issue. Because in most cases, it will not bring any value. I mean, some people or some activities, we can spend a week to identify who wrote this requirement or who on the client side provided this wrong statement that causes this final implementation went wrong, but it will not change the reality. It will be still here. And usually my approach to move forward and to set up, let's say, I don't know, we can skip this. We can call it to apply skip conflict approach. The only case there is slight add-on when we are talking about different parties, vendors, involvement and responsibilities from contractual standpoint. Here we can do this activity, but not a lot of effort, but we should investigate not a person, but party was responsible. And that is where our all business analyst competency things are very important, such as change management strategy or requirements approval, prioritization process, that everything is documented, tracked, discussed, and so on. Because then if you have financial impact on this, it will be very important. For example, now on the project I'm working, and they're saying, okay, for Q4 we should have 100. I'm doing abstract numbers for sure. They're saying we need 120 percentage of advertising launched for this Netflix-like product. Otherwise, we will have like 4 millions by month of lost revenue. And at that point, it not only like skip conflict, but also have very clear picture why it appeared and on which side, if there will be financial impact. Otherwise, I mean, if you started a project, I mean, and for sure, it's also, as Anna said, one criteria is about root cause, another criteria, as I always saying about any activity, process, artifact, it is all about the context. It's very important word for us. And context, if it's a 2 years long-term project, we are in the second month of discovery, requirement solicitation, delivery starting, and we have such kind of situation as you described. Okay, let's just move forward. But if we're at the end of the project, and this is final UAT phase, and we understand there is a financial impact, then maybe it will be only 20% of efforts to skip conflict, move forward, and 80% to investigate why it happened, why did it happen, and which party caused the issue or a conflict.
I think what you and Richard, what you mentioned is also quite important, that all of the projects usually they go through those 4 phases: forming, storming, performing. But there is also this one last phase which sometimes is skipped, which is adjourning, meaning that either we can have a celebration that we did something good, because Richard, you mentioned 80% of the work was still done, or we can have a post-mortem session with, for example, what can we take as a lesson from this experience, right? What we can take forward to avoid this kind of situation in the future. But as all of us, we come from, like I mentioned, different backgrounds, and we work in sometimes distributed teams across different countries. I was wondering, what kind of conflicts have you encountered when it comes to working with these globally distributed teams? Like, have you encountered any? And if so, what kind of things we can do as leaders, as managers, to try to resolve them and or maybe even prevent them from happening in the future? Is the cultural aspect also plays a role in conflict resolution? Maybe let's start with Richard. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, jump all over this one. Absolutely. We all come from cultures that are unique to us. And as I look at the four of us on the screen, we probably represent four different cultures. There might be overlaps, but and therefore how we process data, information is going to be different. How we come to conclusions is going to be different. What we value and what we think is important is going to be different. And each one of those is an opportunity for conflict. When you expand it to cultures that I don't see represented here, such as India or Eastern countries, you know, whether it's China or Australia, or, you know, where they operate in ways that we aren't familiar with, you have to very quickly understand what they value, and how information's processed. Otherwise, you'll spend your whole time just trying to do conflict resolution as opposed to successful delivery.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
you mentioned also about the negotiations, yeah, and the importance of the negotiations as well. So how would you, in that case, because you've been teaching this to people from all over the world, I assume, with so many trainings conducted. So as a trainer, do you also need to adapt your way of teaching, or do you try to have some unified way to teach the conflict resolution? What are your strategies and advice to the audience when you do the training?
That can be strategy for training delivery, but it can be also taken as an approach towards conflicts. For me and for majority of the people, empathy will be number one strategy in the conflict. Like being like also with the active listening, because that will not work, empathy without active listening. And when someone, even the client, will say, or we just expressing very much emotionally that is displaced with us, we can just say that, okay, I understand that you're in that situation. Just saying, I understand. Or if I were in your position, probably I would feel the same. Or just maybe slightly you can say something different, but just acknowledging what the person feels. You don't have to agree, but you can acknowledge that I understand that you're upset. And very often that makes a huge difference. When it comes to the trainings, I'm trying to be always empathetical towards people. And when it comes to the conflicts, they're pretty different cases bringing up to the table. And each person going to have different approach to it, how to handle it. Again, context is important. Who said what, when, it was verbal, not verbal. We will change very often wording. We will sometimes even put some words in other people's mouths. That's the risk that we are taking. However, being empathetical, trying to be very much understandable towards the conflict situation. And I think that's and you can take from it and then you will see how the situation will develop. For sure, I will not recommend when the emotions are high, so someone is shouting at you, someone is not even allowing you to speak your mind. I will never recommend to match that level of energy. I would recommend to do everything in your power to decrease those emotions by giving yourself a time, like take a deep breath, or propose other side, but maybe to take a 5 minutes break or see tomorrow, just to say that maybe tomorrow we're going to have a better resolution to that. So it's always about reading the room and trying to put yourself even in the shoes of your interlocutor.
Mm-hmm. Mikhail, we've been working several times on the assessment sessions, and sometimes there is this question asked to the candidates on the assessment: how do you deal, when a conflict happens? And sometimes the candidates are answering, "Well, I don't have a conflict, but my colleague had a conflict," and they just try to appear themselves as a person who never experienced the conflict, but they saw something from afar. And I was like wondering, what do you think about those type of answers? And like, is it really recommended type of answering, or is it better to just admit that we had a conflict and we potentially applied some solution for it?
I don't know. I mean, uh, I don't think. I mean, when I hear people are referring to another people or saying we, then it looks like a person trying to shift his responsibility from maybe not solving the conflict, but be part of a conflict. Sorry. And in general, it depends again on the context and scenario. I would think just about maybe one additional criteria for effective conflicts resolution, and especially prevention of conflicts, is transparency on all levels, because it's really important. I mean, just also to add what you earlier mentioned about multicultural environment. For example, I'm working from Spain with my client in France, and I'm working with client's client who is in Germany, and there is a multicultural difference. And about this conflicts prevention, when they're only starting to be in place, for example, simple situation, I scheduled a weekly call with a client and my client and client's client for a team at 12 a.m. each day to sync up. Not each day, weekly call at 12. Two calls per week at 12 a.m. And I noticed that people from France are not joining very proactively. And it was just on a second or a third call, and I just said, for sake of transparency, are we comfortable with this timing? And there was, for me, interesting point and very transparent point from team from France. They said, usually, at least in our company, we have our lunch from 12 to 2 p.m. and we just do not join this time. I said, okay, good, let's move it. And we moved it at 10 a.m. and it was done. And I see that when first two times people joined from France, they were like, intention, how to say, they were not nervous, but they were not very, so they were not very happy to talk. Like they were a little bit closed for talk. They were trying to
hungry.
solve questions. They were just hungry. And we moved it, and it was really good. So at 10 a.m., everyone very fresh and ready for lunch. Future lunch. It's also important.
Already after the coffee.
Yeah, it's also a factor. It's not about like IT specific things or delivery. It was purely multicultural environment. And for this maybe not multicultural, different teams environment. But it was important to resolve it as much as possible, as quickly as possible. So and usually it's what also Anna mentioned. I think there always should be a person, team lead, program project manager, BA lead, person. I call them not the managers but orchestrators, people who are constantly watching this environment. And for example, again, as I said, Anna, I think you mentioned, if I see any internal signs, personal signs of a person from his behavior, from her face, I already apply my soft skill experience. Something is wrong. I feel something wrong. I can even type something internally in the chat and say, okay, everything is okay. Or if you feel something wrong with this approach, with this process. And sometimes people or a person, they just waiting this light small trigger to open themselves and say, yeah, usually on previous project I was working like this. It's not the case. Or, I have, or another case, people say, no, I don't like at 5 p.m. because each time at 5:50 I need to take my children from kindergarten.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's cool. We discuss it. We close this time slot for offline work.
I have a question also about this type of asking questions, because sometimes we have this value at EPAM, act as a team. Yeah, so we appear on the meeting, several representatives of EPAM, and we want to speak the same language, meaning so that like if we are discussing a certain solution, we appear professional, like we discuss the solution up front. But then there might be a situation where suddenly I have a different perception, a different idea how to resolve it, and how in that case I can share this during the meeting without throwing off the entire team, or without like looking unprofessional, or like Richard, like you've mentioned it recently, without throwing a curveball, right? So for example, can you share like some strategies how to, like, in this particular situation where we see we might have a good option or good idea, but not to throw off or not to like appear.
I mean, I think it depends on the audience, so I know the reference. There shouldn't be any curveballs. There's, the messaging should be in sync when you're dealing with the client. I think if we start exhibiting conflict in front of the client, it undermines their confidence in us. So it's it's understanding the circumstances. So conflict has its place, and you brought up, there's plenty of good reasons why you want to actually stimulate conflict, but you have to do it at sort of the ground level, so that as you go up the chain, and now I speak, I guess, more from a senior management perspective. And this goes back to that telephone game. By the time you get a message up to senior management, if it isn't well crafted, all hell can break loose. And because the client and senior management aren't going to have the same level of detail that you have living it day in and day out. And therefore, they're going to bring their own experience and their own point of view to fill in the gaps. Like, was it Jurassic Park, where you have to fill in the DNA? Everyone does that. Everyone fills in the DNA to make their own dinosaur. So you want to minimize the number of gaps, so that what they're able to do is not spend their thought power filling in the gaps, but their thought power in terms of what it is that you are asking of them. So I think as you move up the chain or out towards the client, you have to be very careful that you don't bring that messaging at that point. If it's so urgent, call off the meeting and regroup. But nothing can be that urgent and important that it has to be brought up in a situation where not everyone's on the same page.
And I think sometimes also not necessarily a good idea, like when you have a presenter talking about something, to write that to that person in Teams, for example. Oh, by the way, there's like this very important thing to mention, because in that case, when you are presenting, when you are speaking to the customer, you are focused on the message you want to deliver. So you not necessarily will have the time and attention to read through the messages. So sometimes it's just better to take some things offline. And it's always better, I guess, to regroup.
That's right. Then you can chat me offline and go, oh, I'm thinking of mentioning this in front of the client. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And then I won't accuse you of throwing me a curveball.
Definitely, sometimes better to take some of the things, like I said, offline. But also, when it comes to dealing with those situations where a conflict might arise. So I was wondering what we can do as leaders or as managers, to cultivate a culture of having people not being afraid to raise their concerns, because sometimes people are afraid to be so-called the whistleblowers, right? And sometimes they just prefer to to be silent, and then, for example, something might explode into our face, and someone might come to us and say, "Yeah, if you'd ask me, I would have told you this might happen." And so, what kind of things we as leaders, as managers, can do to build this foster this environment of collaboration?
I see Anna's ready to jump in.
Mm-hmm.
I see
lowered,
her eyes.
she lowered the mic.
Yeah, exactly.
The first thing that came to my mind is the tip to never solve problems for people in your resource pool. Whenever you will hear that someone's coming and is complaining that, oh, the client, or this person in my team, or this PM, or this, or whoever it will be, the first question should be that, have you told that to that person that you're complaining about, or have you had the conversation with team lead about that? Whatever. It's about the coaching approach to problem solving. Have you tried this, or have you asked? And do not say what would you do in that situation, because you're senior, you manage, you've already been there, you've already overcome such a stuff. However, people are gonna learn if they will come up with their own idea of solving or approaching the conflict. They will feel accountable for this idea and make this idea work for them. And then they will come back to you, hopefully, with a beautiful resolution. Sometimes you can be a guide, sometimes you can give a tip. However, I will not recommend that you will always step in and you will be the person who solves problems for others.
Mm-hmm. Mihail, your thoughts on this? Because you've been acting in your career as a mentor as well, right? So sometimes people do come to you for wisdom, for experience.
Oh, sorry, I'm a little bit lost. What was this initially about?
So the question is about how to foster an environment of collaboration, and what we as leaders and managers can do to just encourage people not to be afraid to be, to raise their concerns, and not be afraid that this might actually cause a conflict. So you are a line manager, you are a mentor. So do you have any kind of strategies that you would apply to your unit or to the people with whom you work on the project, not to be afraid to raise concerns?
No suggestion. I need particular case study to understand it. No.
I mean, I'll jump in. I think, first of all, hold yourself to the same standard that you're going to hold anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're expecting people to stand up and take a stand and have an opinion and not be afraid of conflict, have an opinion, express an opinion, they need to see you standing up. If the question is moving from sort of with senior management, they need to see you stepping up to your senior management and not being afraid to create a conflict, to have an opinion, and be wrong sometimes. So if you Delivery Central, I'm always using analogies, so my apologies. But Delivery Central, for those of you who use Delivery Central, has the RAG status for each project and stuff like that. And the rule of thumb for management is what is the worst color that you can see?
Green. Because something is reported incorrectly.
And the answer should be, and I mean this very seriously, the answer should be gray, because there's no opinion. I don't care if it's red. I don't care if it's amber or green. I don't care if I don't agree with your opinion. Just have one. And that's what you can do so picking on people, the people who are going to be very reluctant to express their opinion. You put them on the spot and you make them feel uncomfortable, because unfortunately that is part of what helps us grow. So, you know, you were talking about what's the positive side of conflict. Anxiety isn't always bad, because what it does is it releases,
endorphins or adrenaline.
Yeah, it was what's adrenaline. That's the word I was looking for. It releases adrenaline. Adrenaline stimulates your brain. In other words, so there are a lot of positive side effects to that. So it's lead by example and make people just a little bit uncomfortable. In the beginning, it'll have terrible side effects.
Mm-hmm.
They'll hate you for it. But over time, there will be a level of respect that gets generated.
I think there sometimes also
true.
is a situation, we, I guess, all had a situation this once in our life where we had this thought, oh, I wish I would say that, or things would be different if I would use that type of argument, right? So I don't know, maybe after a job interview, maybe after an assessment, maybe after a meeting with a client. So what we can do, what kind of proactive measurements we can do to avoid those type of situations, not to have those kind of regrets afterwards. And I see you have some idea.
Yeah, and actually, I will link that also to the previous question, because what we can foster psychological safety. We can, as a managers, senior leaders, whoever has something to deal with the teams, a dynamic of the team, to be an advocate for the psychological safety, meaning that we can be the role models. Whoever will bring any kind of idea or complaint, whatever, they're like, okay, great that you're sharing that with me. Let's discuss. I will ask you some questions. Great, you can answer whatever you want. You will give me your opinions. So that's something that also will not change the whole dynamic of the team overnight. Absolutely not. That's the process. However, that also will contribute to helping people even participating in conflict situations, because they will be not afraid to speak their mind, because when they speak their mind, no one is judging them. Or if they are maybe not judging, but they might be challenged by clever questions. And that actually brings us to the point that thanks to that kind of actions, we can have great resolutions, we can have better relationship within the team's members, we can have people who will not be afraid to speak their mind. I'm repeating myself. However, it's the way how people can overcome the fear of speaking, because they will feel safe in EPAM's environment, in our organization, to talk, to speak. And that's the thing. When it comes from the perspective of the regular employee, I can just suggest just to be brave. Richard mentioned about this safe spots that we are in. Indeed, we need to cross our boundaries, because the growth will not happen. So if we want to grow as individuals, as professionals, we need to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations. So just raise a hand, speak your mind, and how some slogan of a well-known company says, just do it. And that's it.
And I think
managers
also,
have to, it's a manager's role to, I maybe I'm being too simplistic, but in some ways, senior, the more senior as a manager, you have to become a little more parental. And to what Anna's saying, don't solve the problem. You don't solve your kids' problems. You have to let them skin their knees and make bad decisions.
Oh, yes.
But you're there to be that safety net, so that they don't crash and burn.
And I think also very, very important aspect is don't blame the messenger, blame the message. And just really, sometimes it takes a lot of courage to raise a certain concern. And, maybe everyone is thinking the same thing, but as no one is courageous enough to say something out loud. So there is at least a person who speaks reasonably and raises a certain concern. then definitely worth to adhere and listen to what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would also only add one more time that anyone can raise concern and be transparent and open, but the best practice to be in the context of the topic. Yeah, because if someone is asking uncomfortable, conflicting question within the context, it's great. And any person have two options. From my experience and as my point of view, be prepared by himself, herself. I mean, be prepared on her own or on his own, or ask your more experienced colleague. It's your manager, resource manager, your teammate, your mentor, whoever. Because for me, it was always, it is always the case. Even now I'm working as a program manager, and it's for me totally fine if I have some C-level meeting. First, as a preparation step, I will get into the context, and without hesitation, will go to my senior vice president on the client side and will ask, do you think it will be okay to raise this topic? For me, it's not an issue to ask it in one-to-one discussion as a part of preparation and be clear about the context, because sometimes there are situations when someone more experienced in this environment will say to you, no, please, let's skip it because of this and that. And if you will ask question out of the context, it will be just waste time for 20 plus people on the meeting. It will be waste of time. It will be extra concerns from the C-level management, for example, if it's important meeting and so on. It will be just, it will be conflict. It not will be the conflict, but it will be just not the sunny day scenario.
Sure. And I think also quite important aspect as a, I don't know, brain teaser maybe, or like an exercise, food for thought. Like whenever we see something that might be improved, or maybe also try to come up with a solution by ourselves. Yeah? And just, like not only raise that, oh, I see a problem here, but maybe we could apply already this or that solution. The solution doesn't have to be perfect, but it might be a door opener for others to try to investigate what can happen. Nevertheless, as we are approaching the end of time for our today's meeting, I am sharing with you to our audience the link to Mentimeter. So I encourage each and every one of you to join the Menti and select the topic for our next episode. So we have teamwork, leadership, charisma. Oh, actually, teamwork we have twice. Oh, that's interesting. So a small bug appeared. So maybe people will select teamwork just by accumulating both votes. And influence. However, before we'll finish the call and while we wait for you to vote on this, I have a question to our experts. Knowing what you know right now and being at the place of your career where you are right now, what advice would you give to yourself at the very beginning of career in terms of conflict management and in terms of conflict resolution? What would be your suggestion to have this conflict avoided, resolved better? Anna, maybe let's start with you.
The first thought that popped up in my mind was manage your emotions. And that's it.
Bad advisors, right? To act under the influence of emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's also actually interesting. I remember from your training session when you've mentioned that we might have a clash of opinion, and that's absolutely fine. But when we have a clash of opinion plus there is an emotion, then that might already be
negative emotions.
Yeah, exactly.
That's important. Negative emotions. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Richard.
What would I tell myself? Grow up. Yeah. Well, look, guys tend to mature considerably more slowly. So, I honestly wouldn't change anything. The mistakes I've made have helped me learn, and I got no complaints.
Okay. Mikhail, what kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Yeah. When you was talking about this I would say I would advise to myself be more solution presenter to the neither than questioner or a person who asks any questions. I mean, any task usually is much better, can be perceived when it's presented as a solutions rather than additional questions asked regarding any topic.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. As we can see, we have already nearly 20 votes, and majority of people selected leadership as the topic of the next event. So I'll be sure to find great experts who will be able to cover this topic for us, and that's something that we will cover in the 11th episode. But for now, any last closing words from you, Mikhail, before we close off the call?
No, nothing from my side.
All right. So thank you for being with us today and for joining our session. Richard?
Don't shy away from conflict. It's not always a bad thing.
Anna?
And if you're struggling, colleagues, you can always find really great solutions on our Learn portal. Whenever you feel that you can approach even me, just DM me. I will try to help.
Awesome. So with that said, just let me say that it has been a wonderful pleasure to moderate this session with you today. Thank you for all of your insights that you shared with us today. Thank you to our audience for selecting the topic of the 11th episode for Let's Ask Expert. And I do hope to speak to you again in the upcoming future. So for now, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and I will speak to you again in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Cheers.
bye.
Bye-bye.